going back to where we left off, which is the meaning of the alphabet letters. So I quickly ran through the gospel. Is that basically clear? How the gospel message is described by the sequence of the alphabet letters? Yeah.
Now you're going through as a refresher, just
sure.
the gospel again.
The interesting thing to remember regarding this is that, let me back up a little bit. Well, finish my sentence and I'll back up. To remember that the sequence is not arbitrary, it's predetermined by the Creator. Yeah. So you have, why should Aleph be before Bet, and why should Zion follow Vav, and why should this be 4 letters away from that one, and you know, it's like, in English, the letters, other than looking up in the dictionary or the phone book, really don't matter. Completely arbitrary, and if somebody shuffled them around, it's like, well, whatever. You know, modern teaching is like, well, whatever feels good to you, whatever you think it ought to be. You know, mathematics, you know, modern math, it's just whatever kind of sounds right. I mean, from what I understand and what they teach in the schools, it doesn't even matter if you really spell it the way it's really spelled, just so long as you know what the word is, and which is completely the opposite of what this is all about. But so the thing to regard with this is that these things are in this specific sequence, and there's neither more nor less than exactly the right number. It reminds me of this movie years ago, Amadeus, came out about Mozart, and he played, you know, a lot of staccato music, and the emperor or the king had wanted him to write this music, and he said, well, how do you like this song I've written? And the king says, well, there's too many notes. He says, what do you mean there's too many notes? And he says, just, can you take some out? And Mozart was going like, which notes do you want me to take out? And the king was like, well, I don't know, there's just too many of them. You know, it's like, it was pretty funny. But the point is, about this, it's like, why 22 letters? Why not 23? The English has 26. Why not, you know, why not 14 or 12? That's a nice number. Or the point is, he determined these numbers, and then so I was going to go back and relate it to, well, why should Hebrew be credible? Now, we know, if we believe the Bible, that as of the Tower of Babel incident, that's why we have all the languages that are across the face of the earth right now. Before that, there was one language. Do we know, or is there any way to prove what the language was before the Tower of Babel? Does anybody know of any scientific, archaeological fact or reckoning that we have to prove one way or another what was what?
I heard his first language was silence, and everything else was a translation.
Yes, I can hum in 8 languages.
Is that?
I said yes, and I can hum in 8 languages.
Can hum in 8 languages. Well, so the point is, there's no way for us to know what the original language was before the Tower of Babel. Now, we could say, since the Tower of Babel, all languages which now exist either became at that time or altered into what we now have, so they've been morphs or permutations of whatever the original languages which were scrambled at that occasion. But was Hebrew one of those permutations? Was the ancient Hebrew language one of the languages which came to be after the Tower of Babel incident? In other words, which language was then spoken to Noah? Which language was spoken to Adam? Is there any way to know? We seem to have no relics which have remained through the course of time from before the flood until now, so it's all conjecture. Theoretically, it's conjecture. That's a kind of a joke. Not that it means anything. Anyway, the point is, I maintain, and I'll try to show you why, that Hebrew was the language spoken before the flood, and spoken to Adam and Hua, Adam and Eve, and to Noah. And that it was the language which, though it was spoken at the time of the Tower of Babel, all other languages changed, but Hebrew remained the same. All other languages then have morphed through time, altered, but Hebrew hasn't. Now, I mentioned earlier that some modern-day Jewish scholars of the language regard the ancient Paleo as being Canaanitish, in that their Frank Sequence discusses this. Ox, house, camel, door, window, nail, weapon, fence, basket full, hand that works, open hand, gift or covering, shepherd's staff, chaotic water, fish. Somic would be a prop, something that you prop up something with. Eye, mouth, fish hook, back of the head, front of the face or the head, teeth, and sign or mark. That's what Frank Seekins in the back of Lou White's book, Fossilized Customs, will tell you that. And you can look on the internet under various different sources, including Monty Judah and a bunch of other people, and they'll say, well, yeah, that's what they mean. Each sequence of each thing of the letters is also verbs. So you could say Aleph, well, that's like master, meaning that which controls. Bet is a house, which means in, which is not really a verb as much as a preposition. It's a status of being. You might say in versus out. Gimel, back and forth. Dalet, well, a door is an access, so it's a portal, so it's a mechanism of entry, but then by being entry, it's also the door. Greek versus Hebrew way of thinking. Hebrew, again, reiterate, that's which was unlocks and opens. The door is how you get out to get free, but a door is also what you close to protect yourself. So the Greek way of thinking about a door is, or a key, that which locks or shuts up. So you may say, well, shut for protection, but also shut for imprisonment. So like the word religion means that which binds, or so you could say, well, the tie that binds is the love of Yeshua. By his blood we're collectively of his body, and that's this religious thing, which is good. But it's like, well, yeah, but they also put a fence around you with barbed wire to incarcerate you and, lock you up. Oh, that's a bad thing, set me free. So it all depends. It's not good or bad. It's your perspective on your preference versus your otherwise. So here then, I'm showing you a more of a process definition of these words. So Dalet would be that with that access point, which either gives you entrance to or keeps you out of. Hey is a window, or that which reveals. Vav is that which secures or bridges or makes the connection. Zion would be that which cuts off. I mean, it is a weapon, but it's also that which separates or is cut off from. And when you're cut off from something, there's no going back. So this is a serious transition point. But I would throw one other regard to you, that every letter is a serious transition. It's an in or out. Every door is like a gate. And it's almost like if you're in a maze where you go through one door and you can't go back. This is not like that. I mean, it's a door where once you're that side of it, you can't go back. But the interesting thing about the language is that once you understand it, you can go this way or that way. Once you understand the letters, you can see how they relate to each other back and forth and around, and all of a sudden you can go wherever we want within this, because this whole thing is its own place. And even though it's in a linear sequence, that's just for the sake of reference chronologically, but once you, to reiterate, once you understand the chronology, you realize how you can jump around, which is to say form words. Words are letters taken out of sequence and put together, but they're put together in such a way because of where they are in the sequence. In other words, this being a yod, why is the hand that works here and not here? Why can't you flip these two letters around and say it doesn't matter? We were just discussing how in modern Hebrew they say a word may start with a Q or a kuf, whereas in the dictionary it might say it starts with a kaf. Why? Well, they both sound like k. It's a phonetic sound, but one's a K and one's a Q. Well, what's the difference? It's a big difference. In which case you could see the word kadosh written in English, and sometimes it's spelled with a Q, or like Gaddafi, the guy from Libya, and sometimes it's a K and sometimes it's a Q. It might even be a C, and it's like, well, that doesn't matter, it's English. It's like, well, so what? Going back to the title, so what? Why do these things matter? It all depends on your point of view, which we'll get to. So anyway, to go back to the process, cut off, fence, which is that which surrounds or holds in. Tet is a seal, or that which is then claimed, or that which is authoritative, like a signet ring stamp. It's like, okay, this is now authenticated. Yod is the hand of work, so that which establishes or causes, or that which is claimed. Kaf is a covering or like a gift, so that's something which is given as a covering. Or it's also like a filter grate, and like the hands are in a line. So we were just looking up in this dictionary under words that started with kaf and resh, and it has to do with like a chicken comb or a plowed field or bands of color or music. And you'll realize that the words that we have in English are what they are because of the Hebrew. And you could say, well, Chromatic, that starts with a CH, but why does that have to do with a cough, which is a K sound? And it's like, because these are lines, and chromatic, anyway, you actually have to open up this dictionary. Speaking of which, this is a great dictionary. Ernest Klein, was written in the, this fellow died in 1983, this is the last work of his life, from what I understand, and you could do things with this that, it's a whole other subject, but for example, her name starts with Kaf and Resh, K-R, named after a river. So we're looking up just the word starting with Kaf Resh. And if you look up just the word Kaf Resh, it means something, but then there's 3 more pages of words that start with the letters Kaf and Resh. And what I found is that if you look up all the words that start with Kaf and Resh, and you see what do they all have in common, you'll realize every word starting with those 2 letters, what they have in common is the meaning of the letters Kaf and Resh, but especially the letter Kaf. And it gives you a greater understanding of what the letter Kaf means. Hence what I was talking about the swarm of electrons around the nucleus. If the nucleus is the letter, all these swarms of things that are built out of that letter, every possible word built out of that letter tells you something about what that letter means, which is why that letter was chosen to designate that object which exists, which is a manifestation of his will and desire, which is within the Aleph Tav. So the interesting thing about that is to say, when we're first looking at the letters of words, it's like, and we'll get into this in just a moment, why Yod He Vav He, why Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, this is all his name, which I'll talk about in a minute, but why did he choose the letters Yod He Vav He to reference his name? If you realize where are those letters in this sequence and what they mean, you'll know exactly why it's Yod He Vav He. So you could take every word and say, what does it really mean? So here we have, in the interlinear, you may open up this book and say, well, I want to know what a word means. So here, just pick up a random page, and God, Elohim. Okay, the word Elohim means God. Okay, we go on from there. It's like, no, wait a minute, why is it Elohim? Aleph, Lamed, He, Yod, Mem. Why should the Hebraic mind call him Elohim, which is plural? Anything ending in a Yod Mem is plural, or if it's a Vav Tav, it's plural also. Gender, feminine, masculine, similar to Spanish. But the point is, why call him Elohim? Why not just God? When we think of God, we're just like, well, the big guy, the guy in the sky, the guy that made all this. Aleph, the beginning of all, the author, the architect, the one with authority, who reveals what he has made and brought forth. That's who Elohim is. The author who by his authority reveals what he has caused to exist, to be birthed. You see that? The meanings of the letters Aleph, Lamed, He, Yod, Mem. Does everybody see that?
Yeah. Could we get what you're saying, the same definitions for those letters from Frank Seekins? Pretty much. I'm looking for something.
This goes a little bit past where Frank Seekins goes.
Okay.
So that's why I'm trying to run through this. Let me show you again
Right.
about finishing the meanings of the letters. I got to this point, that which is sealed like a signet. This is that which is made. The Kaf is the open hand. This is the closed hand, or the hand that works. This is the open hand, gift, covering, filter. Lamed, shepherd staff, or that which leads or guides or protects or teaches or learns, governs. It has to do with authority. Mem, chaotic water. So it has to do with water, which has to do with people. In the book of Revelations, I believe, talks about that, and some other verses, prophetic things. Water is referring to people. It also has to do with birth. Women's water breaks to give birth.
Yeah.
And it also has to do then with, so it has to do with chaos, people, and birth primarily. Noon, we talked about that earlier. Fish, darting to life, life imparted, equipped, branching out. Having come to life, then what do? You grow and develop. Psalmic then, like a watchtower or that which supports. Well, Yeshua said, I'm the vine, you're the branches. So here you have a center stalk and these two sides of branches coming out like a tree. So once it's been equipped with life, once the seed is born, it comes to life. Well, here there's an architectural or agricultural. The plowed field by the shepherd's staff, you know, planting the seed. It's born. Life is imparted to it. It starts to grow, and then it goes to bear fruit. And as it bears fruit, then the fruit is judged and then eaten, and it accomplishes its. You know, you could see the sequence here is mandated. In other words, you can't harvest before you plow the field. And you know, there's this sequence in the creation of what is in nature. There's a sequence in a person's life. There's a sequence in this progression of thought that's like, okay, you got to start here and go there. The simplest mathematical equations, if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. That's like the primary algebraic formula. But you have to start with, if this is that, you have to start somewhere. And this starts the plan from the beginning, the authority, the architect, the beginning of this whole thing. Put it into this structure, cause this to be. But anyway, I digress. Let me finish with this. Here's the samik, which is the vine and the branches, basically like a menorah. Then you have the ayin, which is seeing, comprehending, knowledge. Pei, which is speaking, talking, eating, breathing, blowing, in, out, eating, in, out, thoughts, perceptions, in, out, processing. You have the zodic fish hook, which is also desires, because your desires are what catches you. It's also an aggressive thing to be caught with a fish hook, especially if you're a fish, which has something to do with playing into this whole thing. But anyway, this is the back of the head, or that which comes next, or that which is least. If that which is most preeminent comes first, that which is least comes later. So this is that concept. And then resh is the head, which is the source by which other things come. The headwaters of a stream is where it sources from. Then you have sheen, which is the consuming, the fire, or the nurturing, or the inner essence of being. And then you have the tav, which is simply the sign or the mark. If you're in agreement on a contract, sign at the X. And people who couldn't even sign their name used to sign with an X. Well, it basically all comes back from this, and Frank Seekins talks about that. It's the sign, like Yeshua being on a cross, and whether some people believe it was a stake or a cross, it's like, well, the point is, if he's hanging on a cross, that's the sign of the covenant, and Frank Seekins talks about that. So I could show you, if you're interested, I've tried to kind of collect a number of different resources from the internet and from other books and wherever, where other people have given their rendition of what these letters mean. And most of them are the same or similar. Some of them are a little bit out there. Some of them are almost existential or esoteric in meaning. For example, Stan Tenen from the Miru organization, he sees this as a, for example, breaking open is one of the meanings. I think that's the mem. And you can say, well, how's that breaking open? And it's like, well, that's what happens when you're born. So he doesn't say chaotic waters, he talks about breaking open. And for Sheen, I think he was talking about shining. It's like, well, it's where we get the word shine from the sheen, which is what a fire does. And so they're going back to what we were talking before, what does a pencil do? What does a fire do? What do teeth do? So each one of these letters, that's what I'm saying, we could talk probably an hour on the meaning of each letter. And you could look up I've seen books where each chapter was written about each letter, but they never get into the stuff that I'm trying to show you. So I can't really point you to resources which are sufficient to describe this. And not to do you the injustice of showing you something and not finishing it, but to just say, well, the best I can do is to say there's something here which it would take me a lot longer to go into the details of each one, and the best I can do is to say there's stuff here that you could find, and I'll try to show you how you can find it or how I found it. Maybe it would mean talking to you for more hours, which I'd be happy to do, but this is probably the best occasion to go into all that. But then just to say, I'll show you a couple places where I found the alphabet in the scriptures to prove what I'm saying, or to be having being able to see the alphabet gives you a chance to read certain scriptures in light of this and see the scriptures in a whole other way. For example, just yesterday, I was looking at Revelation 21, and if I could show you how the alphabet pattern fits onto Revelation 21, 1 through 7, I believe it is, or 1 through 17, you read it a whole different way. It's like you've never seen it before. And I also put it onto Ephesians 1 and 2. And I could say, oh yeah, I've read Ephesians a million times and studied it a bunch and heard sermons and read books. And yet, when I line up phrase by phrase what Paul said to the Ephesians, I know this doesn't mean anything yet, but according to the alphabet pattern, suddenly you see it as being a whole different thing. It's almost like if somebody tried to describe, to use chemistry again, if somebody tried to describe how these atoms, these elements bond to those, and going, what in the world? You know, and all of a sudden they said, listen, if this one atom has 2 electrons, and you're allowed to have 4 in this one orbit, and this atom has 4, you're allowed to have 6 in an orbit, this one has 2, and this one has 4, those 2 can join together because now they have 6, and they share the one orbit where the 2 plus the 4 make the 6, and so they can join together and are stable. It's like, oh. But if you didn't get that, you don't know why arbitrarily these 2 different types of elements can join together. Is that pretty clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, once you understand what these letters mean and how they work, then you can go from there and see things in the scriptures which are beyond definition, are beyond doctrine, are beyond easy comprehension, almost to the point where maybe you have to have it imparted to you. I don't know. But I see it that I think is so clear, I'm trying to show you what I see. And it may be, I'm not sure how possible it is, but I'm trying.
How would we look at Revelation? I mean, do you have a Hebrew
Revelation?
copy
No.
of Revelation?
No, now here's an interesting thing. Let me go there with that. The benefit of this, these are Hebrew letters.
Yeah.
Now, I will maintain, and I'll have to go back to the beginning to go to the end. Remind me to come back to Revelation also this.
All right.
This is why I think this existed before the creation of the world and was the language that existed before the flood. As I was saying before about the days of creation, this is let there be light, the big white fence. This is the separation of waters from waters, because that's where he separated the pieces of the sacrifice. This is where the 3rd day, where he took the waters which are below and he pulled the land out of it and he spoke plant life into, he didn't bring forth plants yet, but he spoke plant life into the earth. You say, well, that doesn't, how do you say that's waters from waters? Well, it also maps out to correlating to the festivals. The first festival in the spring is Passover. What's Passover? They were in darkness and bondage, like being in the wilderness, in the grip of slavery, and he says, this is the Passover by which I'm setting you free. I'm bringing you into the kingdom of light rather than the kingdom of bondage. That's like Passover. That's like the big white fence. It's a metaphorical equation. An analogy. Unleavened bread. You're separating leavening from unleavening. You're separating his ways from not his ways. Now, when you're on the outside of his kingdom, you cannot do that. You can't be good as a non-person bathed in the blood of Yeshua to get into the kingdom. As a non-Christian, as a non-believer, as a whatever you want to call it. Until you're under the blood of Yeshua, you have no access to his ways, his kingdom. Therefore, you can't process his ways. Therefore, you can't be of him or do what he told you to do if you're still out in the kingdom of darkness and sin and confusion. Because out here, everything is confusion. What little bit vestiges of the truth you get, it's still confusion. But the one thing you have is the testimony of Yeshua on the cross in the darkness, outside the camp. He didn't have Yeshua die on the cross on the inside, where it was only for those exclusive ones within. It was outside, in the world, in the darkness, is where Yeshua was lifted up. For the people in the darkness to see. And so to look at him and say, we can now come in. Because of him, we're allowed in. Anybody that tries to stand at the fence and say, oh no, you can't come in. Well, by the blood of Yeshua, we're given permission.
Amen.
Now, here's the thing, though, to bear in mind. If you're out And you come to the cross, you come to Yeshua, and by his blood, he cleanses you from all sin and says, I have now made the way for you to come in. Is it the same event to stand there and say, oh yes, I'm in? Is it the same event that you get up from that place and walk to the big white fence with the four-colored door and actually enter in? Now here's a question which we've discussed amongst some of us, which is kind of a rhetorical question, but I would put it to you to ask. What does it mean to be saved? Are you saved now? Is it possible to be saved now? Are you saved from the outside looking at the cross? I mean, the Israelites in the wilderness who were bitten by snakes looked up at the bronze serpent and they were saved from the bite just for looking at the cross. Not the cross, at the serpent lifted up, the fiery serpent lifted up. So metaphorically speaking, are you saved when you just simply look at Yeshua? Are you saved when you receive that, okay, I believe it and I receive it? Or are you saved upon confessing it? But if you confess it, is that the same as entering in? Does that say are you saved when you entered in, or are you saved when you looked? Are you saved when you acknowledged, or when you looked, or when you entered? And upon having entered in, if he says, now these are my ways, consider my ways. Now that you're in, now I'm going to show you my ways. And what are his ways? They're represented by the filter, by the grate, by the shepherd's staff, these two working together, the kaf and the lamed, which means, okay, by my authority, these are my ways. You step in the door, and you'll see if you read in the book of Exodus, right inside the door was this altar of sacrifice. Paul said we have to lay ourselves down on the altar of sacrifice as a living sacrifice. In other words, oh yes, I want to join the kingdom. I want to be a member of the kingdom. You step in the door and say, kill yourself, but live. Lay your life down as a living sacrifice. It's like, hey, I thought this was the gravy train. You know, I thought we just joined up and we get everything good and we're just along for the ride. And it's no. You step in the door, and now you start separating out. It's like, well, I was separated out outside. Yes, you were. You were separated out from the land of the dead to the land of the living, outside. But now that you're of the kingdom of the living, now you must separate out your preferences, your desires, your hopes, your aspirations, your dreams, your inclinations, your behavior, your words, those panim, the faces, everything of the depth of within you. You now have to start separating out. It's like, well, me, does a sheep take his knife and start separating off his flesh? No, the priest did that. It's like they grabbed the sacrifice offering, which was not the same offering as the sacrifice for sin out here of those in contact with the dead, which is with Yeshua, but it was a free will offering in there. But they took the sheep, cut his throat, bled it out, skinned it, took its gut. They started separating things out. Certain things were put on the altar and certain things weren't. That was not done outside. Something else was done outside. But once you come in, now it's start, learn the ways. So what does the kaf mean? Like a plowed field, like the hand, like the furrows of a plowed field. This is the plowing. This is learning the ways. And you better regard it as authority, because by his authority, this must happen. And it's the first thing that happens. So you can sit there and say, well, once you come in the gate, don't I get baptized? No. You learn his ways. Well, when we get saved, when we come to Jesus, the first thing we do is get baptized. So don't we jump from here to here? That's the labor. That's baptism. And it's like, well, what does it mean to be baptized? Is it appropriate? Well, now, John the Baptizer was baptizing people right off the bat. What does it mean to be baptized? So now, I'm not trying to say that it's inappropriate if somebody chooses to baptize, but what I'm saying is that the event of learning his ways is not something that says, it's going to take 20 years. And when you learn his ways, then you can get baptized. What I'm saying is, there's a system of his process here which somehow we have to agree to, which takes the rest of our life. Somehow, the event. Now here's Ezekiel's wheel within a wheel. This looks like a linear and straight run. Boom, 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 and there. It's actually more like a wheel, and more like a wheel than more like a spiral. Which I'll explain later. There's a couple spiral things we put up on that door and the other window back in there, written in Paleo Hebrew. But there's a pattern of spinning and turning, which there's many words in Hebrew which talk about spinning and turning, which are his ways. Cycle of Moedim, festivals, of patterns, of seasons, of weeks, of years, of learnings, and it all plays into the same system. But the point is, what does it mean to come to Yeshua? It means all this stuff. It means you come to him, acknowledge that his kingdom is set apart from the kingdom of the world, that his ways are not the world's ways, that he does want us to be cleansed and to be born of him, that he does have something for us to do as a job description of being grafted into him. He's the vine, we're the branches, that he will watch over us and determine everything that we're doing and tell us whether that's correct or not correct, or tell us why, or walk with us as we do this thing, and that the hope set before us is the reason why we came to begin with. All this is incorporated into coming to the cross and saying, yes, I believe and I receive. Having done that, you enter the kingdom of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. It's not the kingdom of the Christians, it's not the kingdom of the Catholics or anybody else, it's the kingdom of blue, purple, red, white.
I like to point out that you can go to the cross and never enter.
There you go, that's the other thing I'm saying. In the sense of, is it the same to come to the cross and say, I'm cleansed by the blood? What does it mean to enter the kingdom? What does it mean to be saved? Are you saved only after Judgment Day, where he says, come on into the kingdom? Now, there's a bunch of people on Judgment Day, as we mentioned earlier, where he says, I never knew you. It's like, whoa, they thought they were saved. What does it mean to be saved? Some people say, I'll know I'm saved when he ushers me onto that right-hand side and says, enter into the kingdom that was prepared for you. It's like, maybe. That's the moment I'm saved. But we believe we're saved as hope, as faith. But some of those people that are going to be on the other side themselves also believe. That's why they're going to be shocked and say, again, every time we think we have the answer, it throws us back. So I can explain some things, and only to get there, only to be thrown back to the beginning, because nothing works as an end run of this, then this, and this, and this, where you end. It's this going around and around and around and around and around. This is the process. So if it sounds like what I'm doing, this is why. Because this process is like around and around, like a spiral. Yes?
Could it be like the sower, when he went out to sow, and some fell on good ground, and some fell on, harsh ground. Maybe that's, the seed, the sower, the parable of the sower.
And you're saying maybe that's, how does that play? Toward
How they entered in, how it fell on their hearts.
Okay, so what you're saying is to be saved means that you would have had to been like that good seed.
Yeah.
Where it took root.
Down.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So you could sit there and say the metaphor of a seed taking root. Now I would appropriate that image somewhere here, probably to here. The seed brought forth and took root. But when the sun came out, it withered. It never stood up and did what it was supposed to do, which is what the psalmic represents. So you could say, well, gosh, you're in the kingdom, aren't you? If the sower went out to the world and threw seed, and the seed sprouted and plowed field, and it sprouted, doesn't that mean you're in the kingdom? I'm not trying to say who's in the kingdom and who's not in the kingdom. I'm simply projecting the question as to our complacency of what is enough, what is acceptable, what is expected of us, and what are we to do? Having, as you said, come into the kingdom, then what? What is our life supposed to consist of? And what I'm trying to say is, our life really supposed to be this right here. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with him, with the hope of our expectation set before us, which is the model of Yeshua and his righteousness, and the eternal perspective, which is to say, the world to come, and him doing what he said he was going to do, and the reward to both the righteous and the wicked, everything just like he said. This is simply coming in. This is learning the ways. This is equipping and cleansing so as to be his. And this is doing. And this is how you do it. And him telling you why and wherefore for you to do it. And so I see this as Micah 6:8. He has shown you, a man, what is good and what the Almighty requires of you. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your Elohim. So do justly is like being the menorah. What does the menorah do? It stands there and shines. What does the shofar do? And I'll explain why the shofar in a moment, but it's filled with breath and it proclaims. It translates breath into audible sound. It's a translation mechanism. It attaches intent to being, you might say, which is kind of what a vav does. And so there's a relationship between the letters, which I'll get to in a second, where each letter can be, now I'm getting to another, like a hyper extension of simple geometry here, where I was trying to show you where there's a process, and there's of each, what each letter means, kind of a verb process. There's an object identity of each letter, and now I'm going to show you I showed you the gospel in each letter, and I can show you the Messiah in each letter. Let me show you how each letter is a revelation of who is Yeshua. Yeshua is the guy who's the architect of the whole thing. And you can go, isn't that the Father? It's like, it's Yod He Vav He, the one Elohim. That's who it was. Who is Yeshua? The one who the plan was incorporated into, and then, as we talked about before, Bereshit and Omer, the one who, when he was simply exposed, when he was simply, once the plan was put in him and the Almighty revealed him, all this came into being as a word spoken. He, the Gimel, he's the guy who goes back and forth, engaging the Almighty to the Almighty's creation. He is the guy who is Jacob's ladder, as he says, I think in Matthew, he said, you know, this ladder that Jacob saw, the vision, was him. But Jacob saw that there was somebody at the top of the ladder, and angels going back and forth. So, well, I once heard a sermon of a guy saying that the metaphor of Noah's Ark was that it's all Yeshua. Yeshua is the ark, Yeshua is the door to the ark, Yeshua is the window to the ark. It's all Yeshua. Everything's revealing him. One way to look at that is that everything, it was created by a word, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us. What's the word? Aleph Tav is the book covers, as it were, on the word. Aleph Tav, the beginning and the end. All of this, everything that exists is part of that word. Therefore, everything that exists somehow is a manifestation of Yeshua, which is a manifestation of his, not his physical form. His physical form was a manifestation of his heart essence, which is El Shaddai the Sheen. But somehow everything that exists, whether it's a light, or a feather, or a towel, or a leaf, or a person, or a rug, all these things that exist are made up of the letters which are part of him. So therefore, if you start learning the letters and you start reading, why is this word translated this way in this Bible, and we get this simple word, okay, oh, this is what this means. And then we start picking apart the letters and understanding the greater revelation of what all these letters mean, and then realize, well, all those letters are all talking about an aspect of Aleph Tav. So therefore, the meaning of everything can be reduced down to Aleph Tav. What is a rug? Oh, that just says something about the character and nature and aspect of Aleph Tav. What is a music stand? Oh, those are just the letters which are part of all this that can be broken down to simply mean Aleph Tav. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that too weird? Do you understand what I'm saying? Everything that exists then somehow is a manifestation of an aspect of his revelation of himself to us in Yeshua, the Aleph Tav, which is the word by which all things are described. You see that? So on the one hand, to pick apart the letters and get everything real big, it can also, by real big I mean I can show you some pages where I can take one sentence and end up with a whole page of a definition of what that sentence says, such as Bereshit. That's one word. And in English it means in the beginning. But it also can mean, in Messiah first El Shaddai established the covenant, which is a whole other concept that you could write a whole page about. And that's what I'm saying. But it also is to say, well, what does Bereshit mean? In the beginning El Shaddai established the covenant. Well, that's Aleph Tav. Isaiah 14:24. He made a plan and he accomplished it. Aleph Tav. The word Bereshit simply means he had a plan and he accomplished it. And it's all in Messiah, which is the Aleph Tav. You see, it's like it's a riddle where it's a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Do you kind of see that?
The answer to all questions.
The answer to all questions is Aleph Tav. So, what I'm saying is that we can expand this out and see that the whole thing, in a vast array of significance, can all be reduced back down to Aleph Tav. And so I noticed one day that it's like, wow, you know, here we have an interlinear with thousands of words, interpreted by each word by thousands of more words, but yet they all mean Aleph Tav. So if you know Yeshua, you know everything. Well, now try to explain it. Oh, no, that's going to take thousands of words. But it's all Aleph Tav. Therefore, it's not Old Testament, New Testament, Jew, Greek, Hebrew, Roman. It's simply the truth. Aleph Tav. And Aleph Tav is separated by the chaotic waters. Aleph Mem. Aleph Mem Tav, chaotic waters, with Mem being this that exists. Everything between the Bet and the Sheen, you might say, is what's between the Aleph and Tav, and that looks like chaotic waters. But anyway, the point of that is to say, why Yod He Vav He? That's the point of this, is the why Yod He Vav He. And if I can show you the significance of Yod He Vav He, then you'll see the significance of Yod He Vav Shinayin. And if you understand that, then you understand that no word is arbitrary. And then you can look back at every other word, such as Emet, Hesed, Ahava, and Tzaddik, and say, oh, why are those spelled that way? And then you'll learn more about those words than you'll ever get out of the dictionary, because the dictionary does not go there, and Frank Seekins doesn't go there, and no translation really goes there. However, when you realize what I'm saying, do you realize how everything all those other people say fits together? And all,
It's there. Even though they don't say it, it's there.
it's there even though they don't say it. They don't even know what they're saying or not saying. They just know what they know, and what they're saying I'm not in disagreement with. I'm just trying to show you what's behind it all.
Actually, Jeff Benner does a real good job getting to the next step beyond Frank Seekins. Not quite where Eric is talking about, but he does a good job too. He breaks down each letter and the word and gives you the ancient Hebrew meaning.
Okay, so starting with a Yod. Now you could sit there and say, why didn't the Almighty call himself the Aleph? When he said to Moses, at the burning bush occasion, Moses said, who shall I say sent me? And he says, Ayah, Asher, Ayah. Well, that's translated, I am that I am. So can anybody, just if anybody has something to say, what does it mean, I am that I am, other than I cause all things to exist, or I am the one who exists? Does anybody else have any sense of what those words mean? It's not that you're wrong. Don't have to be afraid of being wrong. It's just, I'm just asking for a collaborative concepts.
I would think that by saying that, he is saying, do not doubt me. I am. Period.
Okay?
That's all you need to know.
It's very interesting that you'd say that. Do not doubt me. Okay, now here, and again, this isn't a matter of who's right and wrong. We're saying that I'm guessing that the collective of all of us here represents some maybe that have learned a little bit about the Bible, and maybe some that have studied the Bible for 50 years. So out of this whole group, what does this possibly mean to us when here the Almighty Creator of all things is revealing himself in a yet unprecedented way to Moses, this burning bush, which is the start of the whole thing that we now regard as the nation of Israel in modern terms. It was a big event. And for us to say, well, okay, he exists. He caused everything to exist. Don't doubt me. Why didn't he simply say that? I mean, well, you could say, well, he did. He said it very simply, I am that I am. But does anybody else have any other concepts about that?
It means hope.
Hope?
Hope, because people were in despair. And if you don't think that you know if there's anything out there, there's hope.
Right, so for him to say, I really exist, means to say, hey, listen, maybe you haven't seen me lately, as every time that whip cracked across your back, you're going, where is he? He said, I'm here. It's like, do something! You know, it's like, but this hope is in the face of not just despair, but probably bitter grief and despair. But
Tells me that he had no beginning and no end. In other words, he's eternal.
okay, no beginning and end. Right, so it is the all existing, maintaining one. Okay, I want to show you another, and I'm not saying that's in disregard of any of these things. I'll show you one thing that I see in understanding just the letters, and then I'll show you something about why then Yod He Vav He. But let me give you a little bigger scenario regarding that event of the burning bush. So he says to Moses, Ayah, Asher, Ayah. I am that I am, as the way it's translated. But then he says, tell them I am has sent you to me. But then say, Yod He Vav He is my memorial name forever. It's like, well, wait a second. What? When they said, who shall I say sent me, why didn't he say, tell him Yod He Vav He? He didn't say that. He said, tell him I am. And then Yod He Vav He, these 4 letters, Yod He Vav He, was almost like a secondary. Well, which one is his name? Why did he say Yod He Vav He is his name, but tell them I am sent me to you? It's like, again, now we're delving into a realm of thought. It's not a simple answer. And so the question is, can the letters of the words tell us anything about what was really going on? And all I can do is show you what I see. And maybe you can see that as a benefit. And again, the purpose of this is not to say, document what I'm telling you and learn this. It's to give you a perspective, a vantage of a reference to maybe where you can see those things for yourself in maybe other places. So, the way you spell Ayah, I am, is Aleph, Hey, Yod, Hey. The way you spell Yod He Vav He is Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. And the way you spell Yeshua, at least in the scriptures of the Bible, and we'll address this in a minute, is Yod, Hey, Vav, Shin, Ayin. Now, I'm writing in Paleo for a reason. Let me explain that, and I'll go back to this. In the modern Hebrew, when you read those letters, like I can open up this Tanakh. If no one's ever seen one of these, you might want to take a look. When I first saw this, it's like ants crawling on a page. It's like, yeah. I can make no sense of those letters. They're just a bunch of squiggly lines. Now I can look at it and I can see them, and that's only been in the space of about a year or so. But when I first saw this, it's like, this is impossible. How do these people do anything with this? It's almost like looking at Arabic. I mean, to me, Arabic is the same thing now. But now I can look at this and my eyes can distinguish the letters. They really can, and I really couldn't a short while ago. And it's like, why are my eyes now attuned to perceiving what was imperceptible before? Well, it's an interesting thing. There has to be a matter of familiarity, of saturating yourself in the language, and so I can't impart to you anything about this language. I can hopefully make it familiar, and one reason for having this up here is to familiarize you with this. One thing I started to say before is that Frank Sequence showed you the morphing, or the altering, the changing of the letters from the most ancient format to the modern format. What I did in writing this font, you won't find this font necessarily anywhere as this letter style. So what I did is I looked at Frank Sequen's book, and Lou White's, and a few others, and you know, there's modern. And so even in the modern one, it's like, well, does that look exactly like this? Well, kinda. Does that look like that? Well, I mean, I drew it out to where I could easily write it. And I tried to find a certain style that some Jewish writers have said that every letter should have this little thing on top. Because the letter Yod, as a distraction, I'll go into that. The letter Yod in modern is a statement of creation. It starts out of nothing. The Ein Sof, the unlimited one, boom, causes it all to exist. It starts little, it grows into its fullness, and then it'll disappear into poof, nothingness, and go back to eternity. It comes from eternity, exists, and goes back to eternity. That's what's styled, symboled by simply the Yod, the hand of the Creator. That's what they see. And so every letter starts with this little point, as if it came out of nothing, he caused it to exist, and it fulfills its purpose. I started to say that before that the Jews were regarding the Paleo letters as Canaanite, and where did it come from? And if it came from the beginning, then the Canaanites happened to be living in the land where the Hebrew language remained, and so they were using it. That doesn't necessarily mean it was bad, it just means they were the guys around using that in that area. And the other languages drifted off to the four corners of the earth, as it were, and were otherwise. And so to regard the Canaanites using this as meaning it's fouled and looking like idolatrous icons is not necessarily wrong, it's not necessarily appropriate either. Therefore, I'm not looking at the icons, I'm looking at the meanings of the letters, of seeing the Messiah, which is where I was going with that. So here, these various letters drawn this way is just kind of a particular font or style. You could do the same thing with the Paleo. For example, a resh. This was the ancient resh. Well, that certainly doesn't look like that. And this is the modern resh, basically like that. And here it was pointing that way and that way, but it means the head. So I tried to look at all these things and say what shape was not in disagreement with anything that has existed archaeologically throughout the true history of the people on the face of the earth. But here's a simple way to draw it. It looks like a head. Okay, so that's what I drew. The back of the head, the kuf. And understand the kuf is like this mushroom view, this overview. Drew the kuf like that, Masonic like a fishhook, and so forth and so on. So this particular style is kind of a compilation of stuff that Frank Seekins said, even though you might say, well, one of them's from 3000 BC and the other one's from 1000 BC. And it's basically, well, that's why this shape. So here's the Messiah. He's the one who made the plan. And let me go back to that. Sorry, bounce around. But here, Aleph, He, Yod, He. If the Aleph is the separating point that we have, as I said, if the Aleph represents the plan or the purpose, then what is on the eternal side of the Aleph? You said it is the one who has existed without beginning. But we, the material universe, started at a certain point, and that's our only reference. We're linear time sequence thinkers. And so we can picture the beginning of our time, but we can't picture eternity, or what do you do before that? We can't picture that. So our mind starts where he determined it to start, which is kind of like the point of the Aleph. And the backside of the Aleph spreads out onto eternity we have no concept of. So the Aleph kind of, even by its shape, kind of, sort of, says there was something that existed before and beyond that was bigger than what we can see now. What we see now is like the tip of the Aleph. But the Aleph infers that because we are the tip that exists now, there's this thing which is bigger and greater that was far beyond that we have no grasp of. But what he decided to show, he would reveal. Remember, the letter He means revelation, or like shining a light on something, or showing it, or the direct object of saying the, specifically pointing to something. The Almighty, the Infinite One, the Ein Sof, the One without limit, chose to reveal himself simply, in our terms, in our comprehension, as the Creator who would reveal himself. Now, how big is the Creator? Limitless, pretty huge. But this is to say, the guy who just only revealed himself in the capacity of the Creator, it's almost like finding a fingernail and saying, now, who did that belong to? As vast as our comprehension is of the Creator, that's only a piece, a small piece, of who the real Ayah chose to reveal himself as. Which suddenly is like I said, well, we think of the Creator as being limitless, but even in that scope of limitation of being limitless, it's only a little tiny piece of who Ayah is, which is just so beyond big that it's like, well, how can you be beyond infinity? Well, you can't do that reasonably, but unreasonably, like an irrational number, you can go there. And do you see that? So, and then you could say, well, who's Yod He Vav He? Well, this same Creator that the unlimited, infinite one revealed himself as, because all we know of the infinite one is that he created this place. What else did he create? We don't know. We know that he created this, and whatever else there is, he's that guy, but it's all in this picture. Do you see that? The unlimited one revealed himself by the creation that he then revealed himself in. Another way to read that. So therefore, who is Yod He Vav He? Well, the Creator, who is the aspect of the unlimited one that he chose to show himself as, revealed himself. Well, I would maintain that there's 4 ways that he revealed himself. One, he's the guy who made this place, the creator. That's the Yod. Hey, he then gave us the revelation of himself, which is the Torah instructions that he gave to Moses, which is the scriptures. So the Hey is the revelation of the creator. Vav. He became a man. The Vav is the letter which also stands for man. 666, Vav, Vav, Vav. That's where they come up with the letter of man. It's the sixth letter. The Vav is the Creator himself, who gave the instructions, would embody himself as the Messiah, would become incarnate, would become one of us. And then Yeshua said, I leave, so I will send you the Comforter who will lead you into all truth. Hey, the Ruach, the Spirit in us, is the other fourth way he would reveal himself. So how do we know who the Creator is? He gave us 4 ways. He's the guy who made this place. He gave us the instructions. He revealed himself as the embodiment of those instructions. And then in us he will reveal himself to look like the guy who is the embodiment of the instructions. So even these are sequential and linear, equational, in that specific order. So you couldn't say, well, there's 2 Heys, just eliminate one. No, every matter is established by the word of 2 witnesses. A Hey is a witness. A witness is a testifier, a testimony, one who points to, yes, this is what it is, this is what happened. So even in his name, he's got the 2 witnesses. And the man in the middle holding the 2 witnesses, the word given to Moses and the word lived out in us. And Yeshua is the one who's holding these 2 together. He says, I'm the nail, I'm the hook, I'm that which holds it together. I'm the guy who is the revelation of the Creator. And so then the significance of the name Yod He Vav He is to say, that is the letters that represents how he chose for us to regard him. The Creator, the giver of the instructions, who reveals the Creator. Not just arbitrary instructions, instructions which reveal the heart, the character, the nature, the preference, the desire of the Creator. That's what those instructions are. And then the Messiah, who is the one who embodies in a physical form as a human, as the bridge which connects the invisible to the visible, which is also what we're supposed to be, because we're human and we're a Vav and we're a 6, which means we're supposed to be the bridge that Yeshua is the model of as being the iconic bridge, the quintessential bridge. We're supposed to be just like him. We're supposed to be the bridge taking the heart and will and the mind of the Father and incorporating it, manifesting it on the face of the earth just like he did. He said, whatever I've done, you should do an even greater thing. Our Hey should just look exactly like him, which is the embodiment of that Hey. Therefore, everything we read in the instructions in the Torah, we should be looking like. We should be doing. So anyone who says we can't is in disagreement with this. Because he says, I am. What part of I can't fits in the word I am? It doesn't fit. What fits is that we don't get it. We don't understand it. We don't really appropriate it, so we allow ourselves the convenience of the excuse saying we're incapable. But he said, I will put my ruach, my path, my process, my journey, my being in you, who his job is to lead you into all truth. Therefore, if we say, well, I can't, we're not expressing our limitations. We're actually blaspheming his ruach by saying he is incapable. Because his job, the ruach's job, is to see to it that we are led into all truth. And if we say, he's not going to do it, he's going to fail, I can't, dare we minimize his? He said, I am Aleph Tav. The same spirit in me, the Ruach of the Almighty, is the spirit I put in you. As I've planned, so it shall be. Isaiah 14:24. If his plan is for us to do the instructions, we will do the instructions. Otherwise, we're in defiance of this whole covenant. Anybody who says we can't, I'm incapable, I'm a sinner, I can't. It's like, no, we have been cleansed and brought to life and shown the ways and given the equipping And we're not the vine, he's the vine. We're the branches. It's his breath in us that makes the shofar sound. It's his oil in us that makes the menorah light. He will watch over us to see that it's done. And by his word, it will be done. By his word, all this exists. By his word, all this maintains. By his word, all this will accomplish what he has set out to accomplish unto the model that he has given us, which is his promise. After this, when he reveals that all things have been accomplished, like he said, we'll say, oh yes, I guess it was so. Why don't we say that now? Because it's convenient, because it's easy, because we're skeptical, because we're blind and ignorant, because we're what? Because we've been told lies and inherited lies from our forefathers through centuries. The point is, the He revealed in us is the same letter He. Why did he reiterate himself and use the same letter twice? Because we should look the same. The same instructions he gave to Moses. Moses says, and I believe it's in Deuteronomy, he says, Moses said this to the Israelites, now don't think that we should say this is too hard. That we should say, oh, who is it that's going to go into heaven and bring down some sort of divine capability and impart it to us so that we could do this and make this clear? Or who is it that will go down to the depths of the earth and bring up that which is hidden? Though Yeshua did both. Yeshua came from above and he went down to the depths of the earth in the grave. And he brought back the capability for us to do these things. That we should look just like him. So anyone who says that we cannot do any of these things is in defiance of the word. Therefore, we should not look at this word and say, oh, this is some bizarre thing, or this is something past me. It's like, this is a list of instructions of what we're supposed to be presently doing. And doing is not just behavior. So the word Shema means hear, translated in English, but it actually in Hebrew is a greater concept meaning hear, believe, and do. And those three things are as if they were something put on us to accomplish. Yes, it's imparted to us, but we're supposed to be actively doing it. If we have been told we don't need to do anything because we're saved by believing in the blood, we're not going to do anything. If we're told we must do, but we can't, we're not going to do anything. If we're told that we have been brought to life to live, and this is what living looks like, then we're expected to do it, and we'll be judged according to what we do. Because of what we could have done, even though we thought we couldn't. On Judgment Day, when he says, I told you you were supposed to be doing this, oh, but I was saved by the blood. I didn't have to. It didn't matter. So what? Are we going to say, so what to him? And he says, oh, I'll tell you, so what? You're going to end up over here, or you'll end up there, or you'll end up there, according to eternity. And the question is, I'm not saying you're not saved, but if he says he's going to look at the panim, the faces of every word, thought, action, motive, inclination, desire, preference, if he's going to scrutinize down to the barest minutia of detail of how we lived our life, shouldn't somebody tell us? We've been lied to, though no fault of any particular person. Our forefathers, according to the scriptures, preferred confusion. They preferred to not know this. They preferred to be mixed in with the foreign cultures. They preferred for the one man, Moses, you go talk to the Almighty and you come back and tell us. It was the Almighty's preference to speak voice to ear to his people on the Mount Sinai. And the people said, oh, we'll die if he says anymore. Well, gee, as was said, he is the one who says, I am. Have hope. Oh, well, we're going to die if we hear it. No, if you're going to die, you'd have already been dead. You wouldn't be standing there saying we should have died. If he wanted you to die, you'd be dead. This is all about life. This is the kingdom of life. This is the kingdom of death. This is the kingdom of life. Come into the kingdom of life. What's in the kingdom of life? Learn his ways. Oh, well, we don't have to learn his ways because we're already saved. No, you're not saved by learning his ways. Once you come in the door, the first thing you do is learn his ways. And if people tell you you don't need to learn his ways, you will suffer the loss. You'll suffer the loss because when he says, hey, did you do my ways? When I look at you and say, oh, I didn't need to. I was under the blood. It's like, no, it's because you're under the blood that you did need to. I find it curious to say, look at our country, America, and we have talked about, oh, we ought to have the 10 Commandments in the courts, in the schools. Well, why? Do we as believers have to do the 10 Commandments? Well, no, we're under the blood. Do the heathen have to do the 10 Commandments? Well, no, they're not in the kingdom. Well, who are the 10 Commandments for? Well, then why don't we throw them away? Oh, well, there's just nice architecture, the nice things to carve on the stone. It's like, we must observe the 10 Commandments, not because we're doing it unto life, because we can't be saved without Him. No, we're saved by the blood of Yeshua, so that we come into the kingdom and regard His instructions. Okay, this was all about the fact that we have been told that instructions weren't necessary. We were told you come to Yeshua, you get baptized, and you receive the kingdom. That's what the gospel has become, that I can see. You come to Jesus, the blood, you get baptized, you're born again, and you receive the kingdom. That's not this pattern. Now, you can think that's good enough, and I don't want to argue with anybody about that. I'm simply describing this pattern. So here's the pattern. You learn His instructions under His authority, then you are born as unto Him. You're cleansed unto Him. You're baptized, as it were, from death unto life, as a new person, of a new spirit, of a new essence. And equipped. Yeshua Himself, then, going back, well, let me finish this. Equipped so that He gives you a job to do, stand and do. He'll watch what you do, He'll walk with you and talk with you and tell you how to do it, and have the hope set before you. We went through that. So who is this Yeshua? Who is this guy, Aleph Tav? If anybody was going to say, who is Yeshua? Now, you could sit there and describe Him with a book, and describe everything about Yeshua, but I will put this to you. There's only 22 things you can say about Yeshua. Anything more than that you say, you're being redundant. These are the 22 ways He has described Himself. If you leave out some of these ways, you'll have missed something. And if you say more than these 22 ways, like I said, you'll be saying the same thing in more than one way. But each of these 22 things are all the same, but they're all aspects of what He's revealed. Yeshua is the one who designed all this. Yeshua is the one who brought it forth and in whom all is incorporated. Yeshua is the one who engages His creation. As the ladder, as the one who goes up and down the ladder. Yeshua Himself is the door. He says, I am the door. I am the Dalet. I am the only way in, and I'm the only one who's coming out from the heavenlies to come to you. I am the one and only door. Hey, you want to see in, like a window? It's revealed as light in your eyes. This is not the kingdom of darkness, it's the kingdom of light, and it's revealed. I'm revealing the door, I'm not keeping it hidden. That's what the hay means. Yeshua is the light that you see through the door. Vav, Yeshua is the one who became a man as the expression of the Almighty. The expression of Almighty is in all these things. The expression of the ladder, the expression of the door, the expression of the light, the expression of the man, the expression of the one who goes back and forth. All these are the expression of the Almighty revealed to us. The only way we know Him is in these 22 ways. So what I'm saying is, we want to know Him so that, how do we know Him? He reveals Himself to us. In that way He knows us. And how did He reveal Himself to us? In these 22 ways. That's what I'm trying to show you. Yeshua is the one who became a man. Yeshua is the one who became a man, not to lord over us, but to be lifted up and cut off, killed, crucified up for us. Suffer the weapon for us. Yeshua is the fence. Like I said, about Yeshua being Noah's Ark and the door and the window, and the ark saves it. Yeshua is the big white fence. He is the hen who says to Jerusalem, hey, how would you come under my wings and I cover you? Like the hen covering with its wings. That's the big white fence, the kenafim, the talit that He puts over us. Yeshua is the fence. Yeshua then is the altar. You can say, well, how is He this altar? How is He the instructions? He's the Word. The Word is the instruction. The filter of the Word is to say, do you line up with the Word or not? Like the Kaf is like this plowed field, like these color bars, these bars, this orchestration of all things. It's a manifestation of Yeshua, the one who sets all things in order and appropriates the propriety of all things. That's Yeshua. The one who is the shepherd, the one who is the one who pushed and pulls and sets up the mechanics, the physics of the entire universe and causes all these things to work. That's Yeshua. Mem. How is Mem Yeshua? Well, he was born. He calls us to be born of him. We find our being in him. So here you get these concepts which overlap, and they're not necessarily all Greek, and they're not necessarily all Hebrew, and some of them are, how is Yeshua the new birth? Because he is everything. And if you sit there and say, well, how is Yeshua this birth? Yes, he gives us birth, and he was born, but how is he the birth? I tell you, these concepts and these letters, you'd have to sit there and on your own volition, think. Take the time to pause and ponder each one of these letters and ask him to reveal, who is he? How is he to us, these things? And because this isn't about me showing you this, this is me trying to say, this is what I see. Anyway, how is he the new? How is he the life? He doesn't just impart life, he is the life. How's he, well, the vine and the branches, how's he the one who is watching over, the one who's observing, the one who sees all things, the one who's going to, he says, I'm not going to judge you, the words that I spoke is going to judge you. Well, what's his words? The word is him. You have to read more into that. Finish that verse out. We were talking about that earlier. Every verse you hear just a piece of, try to look back in context and see the whole thing. In light of this, you'll understand more. How is he the pay, the word, the fellowship? He is the body by which we are all the members. The fellowship, I'll show you the festivals, how that plays after that. He is the Zadok, he is the righteous one, whom the Ten Commandments, which were the tables put in the Ark of the Covenant, are the expression of. The Kuf, the overview, he is the head. This is like the head almost separated off the rest of the body, which is above all in the other realm. And it's like he is that one that when Moses was put in the cleft of the rock, and he said, show me your glory, show me your esteem, to Yod-Vavhe. You know, and Yod-Vavhe said, you can't see my face and live. But he put him in the cleft of the rock, and he put his hand over him, the covering of his hand, the kaf, right? That lines up with his instructions. He put his instructions, his kaf, over Moses, and he passed by declaring his name. Think of that metaphor. If we think, oh, he just put his hand over him, we get a certain picture. The picture is the story. But look at the letters. He put his open hand, his kaf, his instructions, his Torah. He put his instructions to cover Moses. When we regard the instructions, are we saying this covering of his feathers, his wings, his prayer shawl over us is to not only protect us, but in order to reveal himself to us, to reveal his name. He put his hand over Moses and then passed by revealing his name. That's what these instructions are. If we find ourselves in these instructions and have them covering over us, he will reveal his name, and we will be what Yeshua wanted Jerusalem to be, under his wings as he nurtured them. It's like, we can do this. We can do this, but not if we're told that we don't need to regard the instructions. This is our gift. This is our treasure. This is our... It's basically like a wedding present. The Resh. Who is Yeshua? The glorified, exalted man. This is the humbled man. This is the glorified man. This is the common man. This is the king, the prince, the chief. Sheen. Who is Yeshua? El Shaddai, the consuming fire, the one who will just light this place up when he shows up in his glory, such that the whole world and everything it's made of just melts in the heat and becoming nothing other than what he chooses to remain. Everything becomes ash and disappears other than what he chooses to hold and remain through the other side of the covenant unto the eternal realm. This is Yeshua. The Aleph Bet. So to look then at every word, as I'm saying, is a manifestation of who he is. Who is Yod-Vavhe? The creator, the giver of the instructions, his covering, our word, our mantle. The one who became a man for us to reveal in us his instructions. Who then is Yod-Vav-Shinayin? The creator, the giver of the instructions, the one who became man. El Shaddai, the consuming fire, who will come back and burn this place up. And I, the Ayin, the one who we regard to as a judge.
Right,
Right now?
yeah,
Oh. This we're done.
soon,
So,
now,
okay.
soon, now.
Okay. Let me say this. Does anybody have any particular question or reference to this before we take a break? That they want to throw in the mix?
I kinda asked you earlier, but
How to pronounce it?
Vav, hey, on the Vav, there's 4 ways of pronouncing it. How would you pronounce the Lord's name?
Okay, let me show you this, and we'll take a break unless somebody else has another thing to say. I was wondering about this about a year ago. Some people say it's Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahuwah, Jehovah. There was no letter J until about 500 years ago. It can't be a J. There's no J sound in the Hebrew language nor in the Greek. Yehuda is spelled Yod, A, Vav, Dalet, Hey, Yahu, Huda. You take out the Dalet, it looks like Yahuwah. So Frank or Lou White was saying this should be a U sound. Well, I was thinking about this, so I prayed one day, and I said, listen, if you want us to know how to pronounce your name, you're going to have to tell us. Oh, dear Heavenly Father, because we don't know. It's been lost, it's confused, the Jews tell us not to. They say anybody that utters it should be cursed and put to death. How will we know unless you tell us? Tell me. I want to know. If you want me to know, I want to know. Otherwise, maybe it just doesn't matter, so what? I was going to go to Hawaii in a couple days. Got where I'm going on. Anyway, and I was thinking, I was just starting to learn Hebrew last year, and I was thinking, I was learning the phonetics of the word of Hebrew, and I was thinking of the word Hawaii. Hawaii. And the word Hawaii, when the white guys showed up, there was no language written, and so they incorporated written language, but they had phonetics of the language of Hawaii there. I was thinking, well, how would you say, a lot of Hebrew words are anglicized, and so, and how would you spell Hawaii in Hebrew? Well, the hey sound, ha, is letter hey, or this letter hey right here. Hey, that's ha, that's how you most, like Hashem, the name, ha, that's ha. A W, well, a W, a U, an O, or a V is all a Vav. In fact, a lot of people in Hawaii say Hawaii. Volkswagen, Germans do the same thing, Hawaii. Well, here's another ah. Okay, well, let's call that another hey. An E, well, when you say the word Israel, it starts off with a yod. When you say Ori, my light, the E sound is a yod. It's claiming, like E, so that's a yod.
You mixed your letters here. Your first
Yeah, I know. Hey, it's modern Hebrew. But the point is, gee, if you look at that Hebraically from right to left, that says Yod He Vav He. And so my thinking was that maybe to even bump into this is the Almighty's answer to me saying, my name is the opposite way to say the word Hawaii, which would be I-A-Wa. So I personally think, and shall use his name as Iawa, because I think that's, for me, him saying, well, if you showed me this, to me this is so astounding that I will honor you by saying, I believe your name to be Iawa, rather than Yahweh or Yahweh. If you say Iawa fast enough, it's Iawa, Yahweh. It doesn't matter. You can say, well, I'm not sure, but if I asked him how to pronounce it and he showed me this, then I think I ought to use it by saying Iawa. And there's some American Indians, in fact, the Chinook Indians of Alaska apparently say the Almighty's name is Yahweh or Yahoah. Somebody just told me the other day, there's a sculpture in Portland that says Yahweh, and it says their definition of that word means it is. Well, he who says I exist, and I cause all things to exist, and I simply am, and I was and will be, who was and is to come is, it is. And so even they have the concept, which is to say, I believe that we're all vestiges of the Israelites that have been scattered across the world. So the point of this whole thing, if you want to learn Hebrew, and I'll end with this, if you want to learn Hebrew, which is why I made this little banner thing here, start with his name. What better words to learn? So the way I read this, Iwa, Elohim, which is the word God, which we just went through the word Elohim a moment ago, Sevaot means of hosts, or the many, which is not only, say, in this physical realm, but perhaps in the myriad of hosts in the eternal realms that we will meet one day. And he says his name twice when he appeared to Moses. He said, Yahweh, Yahweh, merciful and kind and generous and compassionate and loving and so forth. So his name is repeated twice here. One's written in modern Hebrew and one's in Paleo Hebrew. Yahweh Elohim Sebayot. Yahweh Elohim Sebayot. And then this is Yeshua HaMashiach, which is the Messiah. El Shaddai, which is the name he revealed himself to Abraham. As in the book of Revelations talks about Yeshua being Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, being El Shaddai. And these are 4 words that I found that he used to describe his own character and nature and essence. Emet, which is truth. Chesed, which is the tender loving kindness, which he talked about when he showed himself to Moses. Ahava, which is love. And Tzaddik, which is righteous. So the words, those are the same words on this banner coming up, only 2 other words are added, which is Kadosh, which is set apart, otherwise translated holy, and Ayah, Aleph He Yod He, which is this word here. So those are the 6 things that he said of himself. Truth, tender loving kindness, love, righteous, set apart, I am. Yahweh Elohim Sebayot, Yeshua HaMashiach El Shaddai. So those being his name, that's a good thing to learn if you want to learn Hebrew. Yeah. Time to quit. The significance of the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is more than just a phonetic sound, Yahweh, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever you want to call it. He gave us a way to determine truth. In that, again, the meanings of the letters Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. What's the Yod? It's what he created. The patterns and metaphors you see in creation that Yeshua made parables out of are one way to determine the truth. In other words, the metaphors that he put in the way plants grow says something about the truth, which is why he gave metaphors about farmers and sowing seed. Whatever the truth is not going to contradict one of those metaphors that he supplied in what he created. So therefore, if something is an abomination against nature, it's contrary to the truth, which is why he established certain protocols of behavior, whether it be food or our behavior or our belief systems or whatever, and he says that's against nature, that's an abomination unto you. The truth is what he did according to the metaphors that are, the paradigms that are structured in the natural status of what he created. When we blend, hybridize, convolute, distort natural process, and people say, oh, well, we're humans, we're allowed to. We have the science to do it. We have free will, we have personal choice, we have whatever. When it goes against the created nature that he made, it's going against the Yod. And if you say, well, hey, we have liberty, fine. But the liberty is not the same thing as the license. And it's not just license, it's a matter of saying, by what mechanism has he given us to determine, to ascertain the truth? The truth is established in the structure of nature, Yod. It's also then what he revealed in the Torah, the Hay. And whatever's in agreement between the Torah and nature. If he said something in the Torah, the first 5 books, Genesis through Deuteronomy, that are revealed to Noah, the greater revelation of the truth, the Tanakh, which is the writings and the prophets, the greater revelation of the truth, which is the story about Yeshua and the epistles. Your definition of the Torah, that's subject to interpretation in terms of, well, what is the actual canon of the Bible and what books are included in this and that and the other thing. Certainly you can reduce it down to say, well, at least the first 5 books, that we know. But people say, well, what if Moses didn't even write that? Then I'd reduce it down and say, well, this is the Torah. Yeshua is the Torah. If there's any question as what is the Torah is simply the instructions of righteousness, the light revealed in the covenant. The word Torah, just so you know, I believe this is how you spell it. Tav, Vav, Resh, Hey. So again, if you know the meanings of the letters, you could say, well, the covenant as Yeshua ben Joseph and Yeshua ben David is revealed. The covenant is revealed as Joseph ben Ruach and Joseph ben, or Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David. Or you could say, this is what Frank Seekins says, the man nailed to the cross is revealed. That's the Torah. But the word for or, O-R, is the pronunciation of light. So the covenant of light is revealed. That's the Torah. It's the instructions in righteousness. So you could say a man walking with Messiah is, if you look at this, is not letters that you're trying to read, but as pictures. So here you have the sign of the covenant, where that is, his will is accomplished. As a man, light revealed from the through the Messiah with the man in the can you see what I'm saying? And I'm not putting it into words very clearly, but can you see the letters as being objects of reference, of concepts? So here we're trying to designate what letters mean things, and here I'm trying to show other concepts. There's a word, I think it's in Daniel. In fact, this is another thing I want to talk about. We'll get to it later, hopefully, but it's this word. Yod, Shin, Tet, Vav. Now, I'm not sure offhand what word that's translated into. But what I see here, if I look at what these letters are, and just look at them as a word which is an accumulation of pictures, this Vav is a man. The Tet is a seal, like you're inside, so you're sealed, you're stamped, you're authenticated. There's two seals. And Shin is teeth, so it's like consuming fire, but it's also destruction, that which is chewed up. It's also the nurturing. Remember, each letter can have kind of a good aspect and a negative aspect, depending on which side you're dealing with. And then the Yod is the hand of the Almighty, the hand that causes things to happen. So here, one way to read this word is that the man who is behind the double seals is safe from the hand of destruction from the Almighty. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, Noah, when he went into the ark, he was sealed from the inside. He sealed it with pitch, and the ark was sealed from the hand of the Almighty on the outside. He had a double seal. He was safe from the cataclysm of the flood, the deluge on the outside. Noah was safe from doubly sealed from the destroying, consuming teeth of the hand of the Almighty on the outside. In the book of Revelations, it talks about those who will overcome, those who will be saved, are the ones who have done two things. They keep the commandments of the covenant and the testimony of Yeshua. Two seals. The double witness, the two Heys in Yod He Vav He. The two testimonies, the two witnesses for a legal matter. The two houses of Israel. There's a whole list of double witnesses all through the scriptures. We could make a list of 100 of them. We tried this one time. Just thought of all the things that have a double witness, and there was many. The point is about this is that what does this word say? Now, this gets into the book of Daniel, which I'll hopefully get to shortly. But you could say, well, so why should I regard, again, so what? Why should I regard what that says? I believe this is not just a warning, but a word of encouragement to us. Here's the warning. Destruction is coming. It's mandated. It's orchestrated, whether we think it's the New World Order or the communists or the Muslims or them, whoever them might be, whoever they are, maybe even our own people. The point is destruction is coming. And whether it's orchestrated by the adversary or by the hand of the Almighty, destruction is coming. If we're safe behind the double tet, the double seal, we're safe, and our confidence should be in the double seal, the fact that we're safe by His word. And this going back to, again, this line of reckoning of the way we know the truth. The truth is what He revealed in His word is the truth, if it aligns with what he put into creation. If we get a translation of something that does not agree with what he made in nature, something's out of sync. And so either we have to redetermine our understanding of what he created or redetermine our translation. But everything he made will agree with everything he said, because what he said is what he made. And what he made is an expression of his word, Yeshua, which is what he said. There cannot be discrepancy. When we looked at the word earlier, Veyomer, and he said, he put the covenant embodied in Messiah and then revealed Messiah, and it caused everything to be by that word, then that's what is an expression of the Messiah. The word we have is his word spoken on Mount Sinai and inscrawled in stone and given to Moses. This is his word. It's the same word as Yeshua the Messiah. Then when Yeshua the Messiah showed up in the face of the earth, he says, look, though I put it in nature, and though I gave you my word, it's gotten all tangled up. Let me tell you the way it is. And let me walk it through and show you everything I do, you could be doing, you ought to be doing, you should be and you will be doing, because I will give you my spirit, and through you, he will be doing those things. But if somebody misinterprets what Yeshua said to think that it doesn't align with the Torah, the instructions, then something's wrong. Either our perception of who Yeshua is wrong, or the instructions are wrong. But one way that he's given for us to calibrate a line of sight for truth, if you have a rifle, a gun, you've got 2 points to determine a straight line. The basic premise in geometry is 2 points establish a line. But if you have 3 points establishing a line, then it's like, well, you're definitely on the right track. But he's given us 4. Yod, He, Vav, He. He said, what I put in nature, I also told you in my word. I also manifested it as Yeshua in the flesh, and I also will do the exact same thing played out in you, revealed through the Ruach. The journey, the path, as I said earlier, is with the Ruach, the breath is this straight course, this path, the same path running right through Yod, He, Vav. He is revealed, like this, revealed in us. And I understand that the rabbis many years ago, at the time of Yeshua, were playing around with looking at shapes of letters, meanings of letters, proximity of letters to other letters. And Yeshua didn't come up and say, shame on you, you shouldn't have done that. He says, you search the scriptures daily, because in them you think there's life, and there is. What you don't see is they speak of me. Yeshua said, I'm the door. They speak of me. You think you're determining letters. You think that in them, you look at the shapes. You know, I can go on and on about the various shapes of the letters and the proximity, which is a whole other talk, not to go into that tangent right now. But the thing is, there's a lot to be studied there. But Yeshua said, you must understand they speak of me. And if you see that they speak of me, that's the life you're looking for. Yes, there's a life unto impartation of, you might say, knowledge and understanding and seeing the way things fit together. But it's not something that should be cloistered away and, oh, we're so smart and they aren't. The clergy, the literate ones, dominating over the illiterate, the ones who don't know the Greek and the Hebrew and the esoteric relationships. That's Nike laity, Nicolaitan, victory over the laity, the clergy over the laity, which is what he condemned in the book of Revelation, as well as Paul referred to against that. That's just inappropriate. It's not his ways. His ways are to make these things available. He revealed himself, and he says, but you guys who don't see it's me, you're trying to eliminate one of who I am and then interpret it? This is all about me. That's the only way you can get to the heart of what he meant when he revealed the truth. If you say, oh, well, we'll look at all these things, but well, Yeshua's the door, well, let's get rid of him, and you can't access the revelation of light to the Almighty without the door. I mean, through every letter, as I said earlier, is a gate. You might say, if you're going to speak to someone who's completely knows nothing of the Scriptures, nothing of the Bible, and you say, well, let's see, what's the gospel message? God sent his son. It's like, whoa, wait. You're premising that on the fact that they believe there's a God. You've got to start with, is there a God? Well, who is this God? Well, he's the guy that made this place. The guy that designed and made this place. Aleph Bet. Aleph Bet happens to be the word for father. It also happens to be the word for, I mentioned before, an umbrella out in the middle of the desert. The center pole of an umbrella or a stake, or this pole that holds up the structure of the house, is known as the Av, if I'm not mistaken, right? That's the center pole, the strength of the house, the Ab of the Bet, strength of the house, is the father. So that's one thing Frank Seekins gets into, is understanding the way that the letters fit together for words which determine the concepts which turn into why we call the father the Ab, or the Abba. So anyway,
That's where the word abbot came from then.
Abbot, yeah, one of the fathers, one of the priests of the convent, of the monasteries. So there's different things we can see in these letters. To take the time to put all those together. Let me show you then about Exodus 4. Following right after he said, "My name is, I am that I name, Ayah, Asher Ayah." Tell him Yod He Vav He sent me. End of chapter 3 of Exodus. And then he goes on to say, "This is my name forever, Yod He Vav He, and this is my remembrance to all generations." It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, I'd have to look up that in the dictionary here and try to find out what that word remembrance means in order to know what maybe he was really saying. But that's a whole other subject. But to go with this, then he says to Moses, "Go, and you shall gather the elders of Israel together, and say to them, Yahweh, Elohim of your fathers, has sent me to you." He says they'll believe you, Pharaoh won't believe you, and this is what's going to happen. And then right at the beginning of chapter 4, Moses says, what if they don't believe? Now when we asked earlier, what does it mean when he says, I am that I am, it was said, well, his word is authoritative. It just is. Well, here Moses says, what if it's not? It's like, gosh, Moses, I mean, here you are standing at the burning bush, and you're saying, what if it's not? The voice of the authority of the Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, just told you, and you're going, yeah, but what if that's not so? It's kind of weird. He says, what's that in your hand? He said, a rod. He says, throw it on the ground. Is everybody familiar with this story?
Yes.
And it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. And Yahweh said to Moses, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So he reached out his hand and caught it, and became a rod in his hand. So that they believe that Yod He Vav He, Elohim of the fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzhak, the Elohim of Yaakov has appeared to you. And Yahweh said to him again, now put this hand in your bosom. Put your hand in your bosom. And he put his hand in his bosom, and he took it out. See, it was leprous like snow. He said, put your hand in your bosom again. Put his hand in his bosom again. He drew it out, and it was like his other flesh. It was restored. And he said, and it shall be, if they do not believe you, nor listen to the voice of the first sign, they shall believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall be, if they do not believe even these two signs, or listen to your voice, then you shall take water from the river and pour it on the dry land, and the water which you take from the river shall become blood on the dry land. Does anybody see Yod He Vav He in that story just there? Do you see it? I'll show you. Believe me. Who's the creator? Who's the Yod? You said, I am. Just believe me. I created this place. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I'm revealing what I'm doing. It'll happen like I said. Just simply believe me because I'm the creator. That's the Yod concept. I'm the creator. I can cause this to happen. That's the Yod. I can cause this to happen. And Moses said, what if it doesn't? He says, okay, if you don't believe me because I'm the creator, I'm going to give you a sign. What's that in your hand? Well, that's the rod. Throw it on the ground. It becomes a snake. And Moses ran from it. It was so scary. Moses, I believe, was, being that he was from Egypt, and they worshipped snakes and all in Egypt, and he was in the desert, and they had a lot of snakes. He's probably seen a lot of snakes. And I would think if Moses was the prince of a man that he was, that he was no guy to run from a mere snake. This must have been some pretty nasty, big, ugly snake. And being that, when Moses ran afraid, I mean, this was like a little too much for him to handle. And he was told to grab it by the tail. Do you see the Torah there? Do you see the hay? The revelation of the Yod He, Vav He? The Creator gave Moses the rod of authority, the hay, the Torah. And what has happened ever since he gave it to him? It's been thrown on the ground and discussed and seen as being a big, scary, ugly snake that everybody has ran from for thousands of years. And here at the end of time, as it were, We are being told, pick it up by the tail, by the end of its jurisdiction, the end of time. Take it up by its tail, if you dare. And instantly it becomes this scepter, this rod. Now what is the Torah? I'm suggesting by the colors, there's a whole other thing, I'll diverge this for a minute, the colors blue, purple, red, white. When Moses and the 70 elders virtually had a picnic lunch on the throne room floor of the Almighty's throne room in heaven on Mount Sinai, the floor was a sapphire blue. That's in the book of Exodus. So I see the blue as being symbolic of the Creator, him simply saying, hey, I made this place, it's my authority, I'm the Creator, which is why the color blue, the Helit blue, is the color of Israel. It's the color of, you might say, Yeshua, the color of his people, and that it was the color of the tzitzit that he said, have this blue thread in these weavings, these knots, these ties that you have, that you wear in your clothing, and that'll remind you that I'm the Creator, I know what's going on, I told you what's going on, I'm watching over you, and this is the Creator's relationship to his people, the whole thing. He made this place, we are of his house, he will relate to us and carry us. He's the one who says, I give you access to all my stuff, I will shine my light on you, I will connect you to me, I will separate you from the world, and I have called you to be separated, you're in my fold, you're sealed of me, you are the one who I am making to be my own, I cover you and give you my ways, by my authority you are mine, and I will protect you and I will watch over you, and I will keep every antagonist at bay. You are cleansed by me, by my way, by my preference. You are equipped by me in just the same way that there's a lightning strike where he chooses, when he chooses, and causes it to be. He will intervene into the affairs of men to make his purposes happen for us as we are in him. And he says, I am the vine, you are my branches, you are bonded and grafted into me. My precious own blood flows through you, my breath is in you. I will watch over you and give you the depth of my understanding and explain everything I have, and almost like a mother bird feeds its baby bird with food out of its own mouth. And I will give you to sit on my throne with me, as Yeshua said, and as my scepter of righteousness, which others may fear, to you it is a scepter of salvation and strength and nurturing and protection. And I will give you this view of all things, of my domain, of my kingdom, of eternity in me. And I will give you, I will raise you up the way I am raised up. The firstborn among many brethren, the promise that what we have to look forward to after this is that he will exalt us to be above even the angels, that such things that we cannot even begin to comprehend. And he says, of my same essence, the sheen, the fire, the consuming fire, so you will be. The fire of El Shaddai that just causes everything in the universe, beyond the universe, to shine. Well, that's who you'll be. That's who I'm going to transform you into. And I will do it because that's my covenant. So even this, a statement of his promises to us, is in the alphabet. So the point is, when we grab a hold of this being the hay, the Torah, his instructions and his authority, as we grab a hold of the tip of the instructions, the Torah, to do them, we are given authority. The Kaf and Lamed go together, the Lamed being the scepter of authority. It's like, wow. So here you have people, you know, I've heard of it in sermons and heard people on TV, and pray for the anointing, pray for the authority. It's like, you want his authority? Regard his instructions. That's where the authority is. Walk in his ways. Why did Yeshua have authority? Because he walked in the ways of his Father. He did what he heard his Father say, and he reiterated the words, and he did the behaviors. And he says, my Father has given all things unto me. And his Father said, this is my Son in whom I am well pleased. Why is he well pleased? Because he learned obedience, the Scriptures tell us. Obedience regarding the instructions is where you get authority. You don't come to the cross and say, okay, I'm going to get baptized, reach behind me, grab that rod of authority, and just jump over everything else to get to sit on the Ark of the Covenant on his throne with him. It's like, this isn't hopscotch. This is a process. You regard the things he said to regard. Anyway, So for him to say, here's this Moses, there's my voice, that's like, yo, simply regard it, because I tell you, what if they don't? Well, here's the authority. Throw it on the ground, it looks like a big ugly snake, pick it back up, it'll become authority again. If that is a prophecy till the end of days, I suggest that's where we are. And if we take hold of the Torah, we will have this authority, because we're doing, no, it's not our authority, it's his authority, brought back to the face of the earth to accomplish what? The next thing Moses did was go back and set the people free, after they'd been in bondage, until the determined end of their bondage, which is metaphorically just like we're facing the greater Exodus, the second Exodus. So this all plays into that whole thing, where because of the people that have been held in the bondage of the Babylonic confusion, cultural, religious, political, you might say mishmash of convoluted ideas, whether they're theological, doctrinal, reality, whatever, it's like, hey, should we blame any individual? No. There was a 2,730-year curse. To make brief mention of it, they were told that if they did waywardly and chose to go the pagan ways, that he would send them into dispersion. And that he would reckon with them after a certain number of years, and if they continued, he'd multiply it 7 times. Well, when the Assyrians invaded the land of Israel, 721 approximately BC, they took people into captivity and scattered them. It's been 2,730 years, which is 7 times that original number, according to the number that Ezekiel laid on his side, I believe it was, which was 365
days.
Is it 390 days?
390, sorry.
390. Ezekiel was told to lay on his side 390 days for the house of Israel, and then another 70 days, I believe, for the house of Judah. So anyway, the point is, 7 times 390 is 2,730. So since Assyria came in and invaded the northern land of Israel and sent them into captivity, 2,730 years came out to be approximately 1996, 1997, which is to say, since the late 90s, the people of the world, whoever they are, which are those remnants of the house of Israel that have been scattered over the face of the earth, now have the great occasion to come back to him, because the curse has been lifted, the sentence has been accomplished. So we now can say, well, gee, our forefathers may have inherited lies, but we don't have to any longer remain and persist and continue in them. We can take a hold of the Torah that they regarded as a big scary snake, and we can do it.
Amen.
We can do it. And if we do it, we will receive the benefit of it. What's the benefit of it? Well, where's the model of a benefit? We certainly have a model of the curse of it. Just look around, because he said, if you do these things, you'll get a blessing. If you don't do those things, you'll get a cursing. He told that to Solomon when Solomon anointed the temple. He said that to Moses when Moses brought the people to the land. And basically what we've seen is the cursing. Well, there's one occasion when we saw the blessing, and that's when Yeshua showed up. What's the next symbol? He took his hand, he plunged it into his bosom, and he brought it back out. Well, that's Yeshua. Yeshua was the right hand of the Father Almighty. He was plunged into the heart of man and took on man's flesh, which was leprous. He became leprous for us. He became our sin. He became the chastisement. He became the curse for us, hung on the cross, died, was buried in the earth, rose again, clean,
Amen.
restored.
Hallelujah.
That's a model for us to say, well, we can be restored. Though we're leprous, though we're rotten, though we're through and through unto death, we can be restored. We can be restored. Yeshua was only restored because he did what was proper and did not have any sin of his own account. He did not then die for his own reckoning, but for ours. Therefore, he did what was right, and he received all the blessings. You might say he took on the curse for us, but in the same regard, well, there's blessings to be had. And if you want to know how to live your life, look at Yeshua. Yeshua was the model. He said there was 3 voices. The voice of the Creator, the voice of the rod, which is the Torah, the voice of the second sign, the hand being plunged in, and then the last one is if they don't receive those 3 voices, then here's a sign. It's not a voice. It looks like a judgment. Pick up water, pour it on the ground, and it turns to blood. Well, when you killed an animal, you're supposed to pour its blood on the ground. So here you have a statement of judgment. The water, which is meant for life, because life wasn't received by the 3 voices, you pick up what was a gift of life for life, and saying this is now unto death. Interesting thing then about the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh with the colors. The blue, the Creator. The purple is royal decrees. The red, the blood of Messiah and the body of Messiah. The word Adam means red earth, the red man, the red flesh, as it were, is the Messiah. And then the white is, if these are the three spring feasts, Yod, Hey, Vav, blue, purple, red, then all the fall feasts are like the second Hey. The second Hey, mapping out to the things that are under the cover in the Mishkan, is the menorah, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, and the Ark of the Covenant. It was hidden. Well, the second Hey is revealed in us. It's hidden. It's the Ruach in us living out what he said to do. The fall feast, when he comes back the second time, apparently according to what Michael Root has been talking about, which is quite insightful, is that when Yeshua came the first time, everything he did was playing out the festivals of Passover, unleavened bread, and Shavuot. Shavuot is Pentecost, means penta in Greek means 50, kost means count 50. The Feast of Weeks. That's the same day that the Holy Spirit was given and the church was born, they say. But the reason Pentecost is significant is not because of that. It's the day that the Ten Commandments were given on Mount Sinai. And they were told to regard that day way back from the beginning. It's not the day the church was born. According to the scriptures, when that first day of Shavuot happened, that's the day that Yahweh married Israel. That's what happened on the day of Pentecost. And what happened at the day of Pentecost after Yeshua was risen from the dead was, you might say, re-engaged by him pouring out the Ruach and said, now remember the words that I told you to do on Mount Sinai? Now I'm putting my Ruach in you to do them. So anybody again who says, oh, well, we can't do them, we don't need to do them, is denying the marriage covenant that he made with Mount Sinai, because the whole purpose of giving us the Ruach on Pentecost is to fulfill the marriage covenant, which is to say, this is the marriage covenant. If you can look it up, he says, will you do what I tell you to do? And all Israel said, yes, we will. We will hear and we will do. And he says, okay, now I'll tell you what the rules are. I'm going to be your Elohim. You're going to be my people. Do what I tell you to do, and I'm going to do this for you. You can run through the list of the meaning of every letter and realize that's what he's going to do for us. And though, you can sit there and run through the list of every letter, and it also describes what we should do to him. In the sense that we should regard him as God. He's the guy that's got everything under control. He's the guy who's planned all this, and I'm going to have trust and confidence in that. Bet. He said that I'm going to be of his house. I'm going to believe that, and I'm going to count it. I'm of his house. Gimel. He said he's the guy that's going to pick me up and carry me, because the Gimel is not only the camel which picks up and carries things, but it's also the course or the track by which it carries it on. So he's Jacob's ladder and says, okay, he's going to give me everything I need, and I can give my request to him, and he's going to take my petitions, Yeshua, and lay them before the Father, and he's going to be the intercessor. That's an intercessor concept. Okay, so that's how I'm going to believe him. See, the Aleph Bet letters now tell us how to believe. Tell us what to believe. Tell us how to regard our duty, our obligation, our privilege of obedience unto him. Obedience not only of our behavior, but obedience of our heart and obedience of our words. How shall we speak? How shall we then live? How shall we believe from within us as a motivating mechanism, as a driving force? How should I set my heart so that my behavior follows? What do I believe in? And we're talking about what Hank just said. This is what we believe in. He says, believe that I am the creator, the giver of the Torah, the guy who was incarnate as Yeshua, and the one who is in you. Believe that. Oh yes, I believe in God. What does that mean to believe in God? I would put to you that if you understand these letters, if we say we believe in him, we ought to be appropriating every one of these letters as our regard of him, and that's what it means to believe. What is faithfulness? Living that out. As I mentioned earlier, the concept of faith is all just assent to this, I'll believe this. In Hebrew, that's more of a Greek thought. In Hebrew, it's faithfulness, which is more doing this. Doing this. James even said, oh, you say you believe, fine, but show me your works, and I'll show you. Don't just show me your works, but I'll show you my faith by my works, is what he was saying. It's faithfulness. The point is, the word for amen, aleph, mem, nun, amun. The plan, the design, the point of the whole thing, brought forth unto life. When somebody says, amen, or so let it be, it's like, what is happening? That which was the purpose and intention is brought forth unto making it alive. Well, the word for faith is aleph, mem, nun, hey, emunah, which is the plan brought forth unto life and revealed in us. Our faith is that the plan is being revealed in us. Okay, so anyway, let me go on this real fast. We only got a few minutes left. Here's the point. If the Yod He Vav maps out to the first spring feast, Passover, unleavened bread, and Pentecost. Passover, coming in from the darkness into the light. Unleavened bread, separating out what is appropriate to what is not appropriate, and holding on to what is appropriate as a sacrifice unto Him. Shavuot, the 50 days where, what does it mean to be baptized? What does it mean to be cleansed? Regard His instructions. Well, wait a minute, this was instructions. Well, that's instruction. They're all wrapped up together, but this is more the instructions and this is more the promises. That's a whole other thing. But to take on His promises, the covenants of promise, is what fits into this pattern here. But this then would be the fall feast. And if this is the fall feast, it's kind of hidden. So how does Yod He Vav He fit into this thing with Exodus 4 regarding this? This is my voice. I'm telling you, this is the way it is. This is the kingdom of heaven. Behold, the kingdom of heaven in His hand. You don't believe that? Here's the instructions. You don't believe that? Here's Yeshua. You don't believe that? When Yeshua comes back, your blood will be poured out on the ground and you're dead. That's what He was just showing to Moses. Yod He Vav He. Yod, my word. Hey, the instructions. Vav, my promises in the Messiah. Hey, if you don't receive those, when the Messiah comes back and you haven't regarded my word or the other two voices of the signs I'm giving you, your blood will be poured out on the ground. This is serious things for when He comes back. I'll show you one more, then we'll probably have to quit here for the Isaiah 49. So I was thinking, since I found that in Exodus 40, which I thought was pretty amazing to see in that story, Yod He Vav He, I thought there's a number of different ways to spell Yeshua's name. Y-A-H, Yahshua, Y-apostrophe, S-H-U-A, Y-E-S-H, and then the way they spell it here in the Scriptures Bible, Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, which is what I had up here. It's like, well, how do we know how to spell it? So what? Does it matter? Call Him Jesus, call Him Yeshua, call Him Isu. I saw this in Isaiah 40. Probably just have time to run through this before we're out. Verse 9. Now the whole chapter of Isaiah 40 is a messianic prophecy, but we won't go to the whole thing. But it says, say to the cities of Yehuda, see, behold, your Elohim. That word behold is the hey. Behold, your Elohim. We expect the very next verse is going to describe who is our Elohim. Let's look. And He's saying to the cities of Yehuda. He's speaking to the Jews? Is He speaking to... Who is Israel? Well, the point is this. We all ought to regard this. See, the Master, Yod He Vav He, comes with a strong hand, and His arm rules for Him. You know which letter that represents?
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Strong hand and His arm rules for Him. That's the letter Yod. Behold your Elohim. Yod. Next. His reward is with Him. I don't have time, but if I looked up the word in the interlinear for reward and then looked it up in the dictionary, this is what it says. If somebody tells you to do something, then depending on whether you do this or don't do this, they will give you then your wage, your reward, what you deserve, according to what you did. Well, what does that imply? That implies we were given instructions, we were told to do it, we're being watched, and when He comes back, we will be held accountable and given our reward for what we were told to do. It's like, well, that's the hey. The hey is, this is the instructions. This is what he's revealing about himself. So that's Yod Hey, the way I see that.